Okay, question 5. Before we talk about question 5, just look at the mark scheme where the question was actually removed from the paper due to an issue. And that doesn't mean to say we can't still make some use of it and sort of come up with an answer and look at why it was perhaps removed. So let's have a quick talk about the question. So circle 5, file handling operations. So file handling is where we take a text file which we're using to store data, and then we can manipulate the data within that text file. That's file handling. So with file handling, there's generally a couple of things that we need to do. So first of all, we need to open the file, and if you open a file, once you've finished working on it, you must always close the file as well. That will ensure that any actions that you've taken are properly closed and the file is completed. Now, when we open a file, we generally choose to open it in read mode, where we can only read the contents, meaning that nobody can accidentally mess up the data, or we can open it in write mode, so we can actually change the data on there. And then lastly, if we don't actually have the file already, then we need to create it. And that's interesting, because if we look at the spec actually says, so we need to be able to open and close a file for reading and writing, but it doesn't actually talk about creating a file as well. And I think there's an assumption that if the file in the spec anyway, I think there's an assumption that if the file doesn't exist, if you try and open a file, it will then create a blank file for you to use, but actually we would need to create it. So that potentially might be why this question was removed. That might have been the issue, whether they talked about it and said, actually I don't think this is fair. But anyway, so we can actually find these words here. So we can open the file. If we open a file, we must always close the file. When we open it, we choose whether to open it in read mode or we open it in write mode. And if the file doesn't exist, then we can create it. So I think that's potentially why it was felt not to be a sort of fair question and was removed from the paper. But you can still, from the video, you can still see the sort of main keywords. Those 4 are the ones in the spec. You may not have known about create, but hopefully this has helped a little bit. Anyway, thanks very much. On to the next question.